Welcome back to the Voices of Dental AI podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shervin Molayem. Today's guest is Dr. Jeremy Krell, founder and managing partner of Revere Partners, the first venture capital fund dedicated exclusively to oral health. Jeremy and I have had the opportunity to collaborate on a couple of deals over the years, and I'm fortunate to consider him a dear friend. He's also had a unique front row seat to the evolution of dental technology and AI, making him one of the best people to discuss where our industry is headed. In this episode, we'll dive into the current state of dental technology, what's driving innovation, where AI is creating real value, and what founders, investors, and dentists should be paying attention to now.
Thank you so much, Shervin. I really appreciate it. Really an honor to be here and excited for our conversation today.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. First, I wanted to kind of get into a little bit about what you're seeing on the funding side, as far as the technology. What are the trends that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, so let me give you just a few trends by the numbers, right? And to contextualize this, Revere sees a lot of data, right? We get about 2 to 3 companies that apply organically per day of the year. These are dental related technologies. They are software, fintech, medtech, specialty products. They are Series A, or a step before or a step behind, right? And so we try to kind of aggregate and, you know, analyze this data and make it accessible for industry use. 3 kind of big category areas right now. If you're looking at 24 versus 2025, and if you're looking at seed versus Series A, right, what we're seeing right now in the round size is that the average round size sits between 3 and 4 million with these types of companies. Now it's actually a little bit up. You can look at it as, essentially last year was about 2 to 3 million, is now about 3 to 4 million. Okay? In terms of valuation has also gone a little bit up, started to trail up at the back half of last year and is up this year over last year for both categories, seed and Series A. Definitely for Series A a little bit more than seed. And then third is revenue, right? And now this is not uncharacteristic, but in the beginning of the year, we've actually seen a little bit of a revenue dip, right? Again, not uncommon. January tends to be, in terms of the cyclicality of dental sales cycles, January tends to be a little bit of a lower, February, March tends to be a little bit of a lower set of months before we kind of get into the main part of the year. But what that means is for investors like myself and potentially yourselves, that is an inflection point, right? This is a point where investors look to really enter, right, and really make a move on technology. You've got good growth in terms of revenue with round sizes, meaning other investors coming into these things as well, right? And so you're able to, to really come in and, make a move there, even if revenue's lower. Yeah.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? Why do you think it's over above this year versus last year? What's the difference you're seeing?
Yeah, primarily softening of the market, right? We're seeing a little bit less, macro volatility. I know that there are wars going on, and there are from tariff wars to real wars. There's, still a lot of economic uncertainty out there, but the uncertainty has sort of settled in, right? People essentially have a better idea of either what they're doing or what their strategy is in this current world, right? I think we're also going to start seeing inflation, interest, moving a little bit more and a little bit more, right? So that is there. I think we're coming off a few good months in the dental business in general. So there's been a lot of softening, right? And that tracks very well with the rest of healthcare. It tracks with other technology categories. So we're from a by the numbers standpoint, right? We are starting to see some market softening. The private equity category, the making illiquid or alternative asset or venture style investments have upticked in general. So we're following kind of market trends, and that's not unsurprising.
Got it. And of the companies that you're seeing, what separates the ones that make it and what the ones that don't?
Yeah, so right now I think the most important thing is having that market risk really mitigated for your investors, right? Naturally, that will look different at seed versus Series A versus Series B stages, but to the greatest extent that at the early stages you can have validation studies done. As you get a little bit bigger, get those some of those LOIs, even if non-binding, in, right, as you enter the market, or have been in the market for a short while, be showing some early revenue, even if it's not the exact business model, right? But showing some revenue and showing growth, right? Stickiness of the revenue that it retains, and also a growth of it incrementally, month over month or quarter over quarter, right? I think right now it's really about controlling the market risk, given the past volatility that's there. The emphasis has been a little bit less on product risk, right? We've seen what technologists can build these days, especially with the tools available to them now. They can build even more, even faster. Um, we've even seen some regulatory approvals open up. We've seen some coding changes. We've seen some guidance from professional associations like the ADA published. So we've actually seen some movement on the product, some of the historical product risk side. But on the commercialization risk or the market risk, really kind of controlling for that is making the difference. Yeah, I look at this in a couple of different ways. The more innovation, that goes on, the new categories and new products that are created. Sometimes we create other problems for ourselves, right? In that regard, right? The explosion of AI, of course, into dentistry and other sectors. It's made decision making more difficult. I would not say it was stellar prior to the AI bubble. But if anything, it's exacerbated or put on the pressure point. In terms of how do relatively non-savvy buyers, right? Buyers where there's split decision making power, right? Users in your office staff that are different from the practice owner, right? How does that buyer who doesn't necessarily know exactly how this technology is working, how do they buy these things, right? And choose between them? How do they assess what's real and what's vapor? Choose to invest the time, the effort, the money to actually implement or even test that thing in their practice. I think that decision making, ability is not fixed. Luckily, I've started to see a couple of Revere working on some solutions and partnering with some solutions, starting to see some different categorization and selection filtering tools come out, that are maturing, and I think that's going to help disintermediate that particular problem. So that would be one of them. I think another one is also just remembering dentistry at the end of the day is a people business, right? We can replace some of the workflows, that are redundant and tedious and, in fact, even prone to human error. We can replace those with different AI or automation type, workflows from some of the tools we now have available. But at the end of the day, we can't forget that production is really driven, not from the X-ray, not from the, you know, some treatment planning or case acceptance tool on its own. It's really driven by the productivity of the owner dentist and/or the key associate dentists in the practice and the hygienists, right? The people who are practicing. So I think solutions that are focused on enhancing those people's capabilities inherently are winning right now, and they're standing in strong contrast to the ocean of otherwise AI solutions. These solutions stand out, right, where they're really performing, and so that's an area. I don't think we've solved the connected dentistry, right, issue, right? This issue of integration and implementation and getting patients portal access to their data. I don't think those some of those problems have largely been solved. So it's still difficult to get integration into a closed developer program for some of the key platform technologies that exist in our space, and so I think that remains a hurdle as well.
Yeah, definitely it's a hurdle. Um, I'm seeing it, firsthand how, the, the amount of integration, the ability to integrate, migrate data, uh, it's not easy. You mentioned about productivity, and it all the boils down to how productive that office is going to be. How do you measure that? Are you looking at their numbers, their burnout, what they're saying, their experience, the patients? Like what measures that productivity?
Yeah, so I'm primarily talking in more objective, both clinical and financial measures, right? What is that income per chair or per hour per doctor, right? Income specifically, right? To what ability is the professional able to do higher margin procedures, and what margin are they creating, right? Things like implants or even advanced all-on X or reconstructive cases, things like veneers and cosmetics, things like ortho, right? I'm looking at it more from how do you train, especially these younger doctors, but even doctors in the middle stages of their careers to expand their clinical capability and drive real business results, real financial measures out of it. There is certainly a big and important subject around the mental health of our providers, right? And actually both being productive and loving what you do, and keeping that sustainable over time. That is a key thing, but not exactly what I'm referring to here.
Yeah. I mean, that's very interesting to see that you need both. You need productivity. It's being measured by how productive and how much money that office is making, and that determines if that tool is successful. So, there's a lot of other parameters that I would look at, but I guess you're looking at the bottom line. If an office or a dentist can make more money off of a tool, then that tool is going to be used and grow.
Yeah, and part of this I think comes from two other points of view, right? And by the way, these things have these learning management systems, let's just call it that broadly, do have other benefits, right? The retention of staff, the happiness of your staff,
Mhm.
the ability to um, otherwise transition from one staff to another, storing institutional knowledge. Right? There's a lot of other benefits of these learning management systems that are not exactly measurable in a number or in a percent, and they are there too, and they are important. Right, but I think the difference maker in terms of how much an office might pay for this, or how much they might actually use it or mandate it, in their practice, and how they might measure its success probably is a little bit more driven not even off of clinical production numbers, right? It's not about a doctor doing squeezing procedures into a given period of time or rushing through their clinical work. I don't want to send the wrong message here, but it is in terms of their learning expanding, and that leading to better financial results. I think that it's an area where you have to look at two other alternatives, especially in multi-site or DSO circumstances, especially in cases where you're hiring young docs, right? Generally speaking, the traditional forms of dental education, and I have had roles in these spaces, working with a couple of dental schools closely in particular. The clinicians are not necessarily at the capability when they graduate to really be sustainable at all in a clinical practice, in a private practice or DSO practice environment, right? So there's a distance there that they have to go, and whether you're an individual practice or you're multi-site or you're DSO, you've probably developed or will develop some ability to essentially train your docs, or train them better, right? And those things can be pretty expensive, right? They're doing it internally. They're shutting down or
Yeah.
losing production to be able to train other doctors. They're sending them off to an internal central site, off to a school that they have a partnership with. That there are a lot of sort of expensive and inefficient ways that we must train our clinicians, especially the young ones, the associates. And so this just implements a, a better, more digitally accessible tool, sometimes a tool that brings learning to your home base environment. And in these cases, I think they can lead to,
Yeah.
education and expansion of your clinical skill set, and that therefore will lead to better business results.
Yeah. Are you referring to like a company like Ripe Global that does
Yeah, that's a really good example, and one of the recent ones that have kind of come to market. And there are others in the education space broadly, right? There are a lot of legacy companies here, from Spear to Resnick to Coachman, and so many others who are expert coys in this space and have different forms of learning and different accessibility to their learnings. This is a big and vast space. Ripe Global has come up over the past recent time frame and really made, I think, a splash in the U.S. But yeah, what's unique about their model in particular is, right, bringing not only the accessibility of the learning digitally, but the mannequin piece, right, the hands-on piece to your particular clinic, and that is unique and different. And also some of the
Yeah.
guarantees
Yeah.
that they make around the performance that will come out of the
Yeah.
doctors, in terms of a money back type guarantee, those are pretty strong, promises that, stand behind now a lot of tested and proven results. There are, of course, caveats reasonably to any program, and you've got to really follow the way that it was instructed, right? Follow the learnings, make sure you're doing them, and doing them the way in which they were taught.
Yeah.
If you start, sort of off-roading, if you will, from a base standpoint, the results are therefore become
Yeah.
a little less predictable, positive or negative. But yeah, I think their solution is unique in the current environment.
Yeah. And which AI use cases are creating real value today versus just marketing?
Yeah, and let me preface this entire section, right, with no, I don't think any one practice and its problems
Yeah.
or opportunities are exactly the same as another practice, right? You have unique people, you have a unique patient population, you have a unique, physical, layout and opportunities or constraints within your practice. You have different tech stack that you use, right? So I really want to just disclaim this with, I'll give some broad, generalizations here and some even more specific technology recommendations, but they your practice and its where it should go next may or may not
Right.
subscribe to some of these more general recommendations, right? um, I think it's making the biggest impact on areas that you know cater to its current skill level, if you will, right? AI can really act as sort of a junior level essentially within your practice. It's really not contextual. It's not going to be creative, right? It doesn't know just how scared your patient might be of a particular procedure, or just how painful that amount of money to pay might be for them or for you, right? It isn't going to creatively suggest a new, technique or material science to you
Yeah.
that could actually help you in the scenario that you're in. It's going to more, right, aggregate and help you
Yeah.
analyze large sets of existing, right, data. So I also want to kind of preface that.
Yeah. Although I think to kind of push back on that, if there is ambient voice listening in the operatory, AI reception is listening to the conversation. You can get a feel for if this patient is stingy with
Sure.
their money, if they're scared, if they're talking about does it pain, that could be scored, that could be categorized, and we later on we can get more insights on that. So I don't think that.
Yeah, these are the early stages of this, right? Something like, Dentif AI or, something like Alta AI and a handful of others, Dento AI, in this space are starting to get into sentiment analysis, right? It does have to be pretty
Yeah.
prescriptive currently, right? There need to be some pretty clear signs that can be scored. That will get better and better and better over time. It will get better and better and better on tone. It will get better and better and better on different types of dialects and um,
Yeah. But you also need video. You want to see facial expressions. You want to see, body language. Exactly.
yeah, facial recognition, body language, all of these things, will certainly improve because they add more and more data input. So, yeah, these can be really impactful. The area of sentiment analysis, I think, the area of the entire, I would say, let's just call it fintech sector, has been a prime location for AI to kind of plant down, right? I mean, everything from pure play payments platforms to and patient. Um, Financing tools and payment plans, this area, but even more so the RCM area, right? Anything about insurance verification, claim submission and processing and tracking, provider credentialing, anything in this realm, even the overarching areas of AR reconciliation, right? I think these have become areas where AI can really be leveraged as tools to come in, but there are caveats there too. There are a lot of the insurers, for example, and their policies are very specific, per state and per policy. And if you don't have the right integrations on the insurance side, you're still not going to get the full picture of information in terms of the different data layers you need to go to, right? So there's still some caveats that exist there. AR reconciliation, it's only as good as the data coming in, right? If there are multiple streams, if you're taking cash payments, if you're taking paper checks, if you've got some of the credit cards coming in, but not the debit cards, if you've got, not the patient financing or not the patient payment plans coming in, but you
Yeah.
have the other things, right? It's tough. Collections, it's done a very good job, I would say overall. I've seen some exciting, results that are there. And that's interesting. I think there's a big question mark around just how many of these agents, kind of exist within one solution versus discrete point solutions and agents,
Yeah.
monitoring agents and people monitoring them. Exactly how that works, or does the office go with agent specialists effectively that can then talk to each other? Again, big asterisk on can then talk to each other. So I think there are some questions about setting up the tech stack in particular within a given practice. But some of these areas are areas where there's a lot of transactions. There's a lot of tedious work and detail. There are formulaic frameworks and ways to do these things that really do make them, I would say, prime for some of the AI solutions that are out there now. I've even seen some dentite exciting solutions on billing medical insurance for both common and uncommon surgical procedures within dentistry, having really good results without removing a lot of the friction around provider credentialing, removing a lot of the friction around how to bill medical and the medical coding system. Seeing some really good and surprising results on things like that. So yeah, the ambient listening and certainly the note taking and charting, the entire fintech area, especially RCM and overall AR reconciliation, the medical billing side. These are
Yeah.
areas where clear
And
solutions have kind of come to market.
I'm seeing a lot of this firsthand because we're building out the first AI native patient management system where a lot of the things that we talked about are included all in one. And so I'm seeing a lot of what you're mentioning. We're seeing the scribe notes. I don't know if dentists have really caught on to that or like to do that yet. That's yet to be seen. I think they still want it to be some sort of templates, but that could also be, you know, automatically put into like what we have right now is we know what the patient's procedure is going to be that day. So automatically that template will be there when they're signing off. They don't need to copy and paste anything. They just change around a couple of things and boom. So there's that. Now, because there are all these point solutions, and if you have an all-in-one software, so what happens to these companies that just have point solutions?
Yeah, so really, really great points there, right? And I think what you guys are building is also really unique because it's not really thought through or built in the way currently of a patient's journey, so to speak, right? It's a little bit more B2B software and centric around the provider, right, rather than the patient. So I think there's some real critical points there that you're making. It's a tough question in terms of what then happens to these point solutions. Those that are really picking up, right, those that have either built interesting tech that is compatible with other software companies out there, those that have picked up real relationships and sales on the DSO side especially, I think there's an opportunity for consolidation there very clearly. I think we'll see smaller players merge together and have multiple different agent functions under one house. I think we'll see much bigger companies, right? Companies that have had large hands in patient engagement, something as respected as Weave, for example, might be able to bring on a couple of these point solutions that fit nicely within its portfolio, and provide some additional value add there to what they've already built. So I think we'll see that, and then we'll certainly see some fizzle out, right? In categories where there are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 doing the same thing. Some of these categories, even the robust ones, may not be robust enough to sustain that many players, right? So we will naturally see some, and it's usually those that are lesser built in terms of their tech, or lesser built, in terms of their, lesser built in terms of their relationships, where it really might, kind of
And
fizzle or
then
come
how does
down.
cost play into all this? So, our platform is like, all in one, $300, $400, depending on what package. When a Weave is $400 just for voice, how could they sustain this kind of these prices?
Yeah. So to your point around, first of all, the note takers, I think there's been some pretty good traction, and I think that's a really good strategy by some of these companies, because it really meaningfully does save providers hours of time. Their tech is pretty tight now. It's really accurate, in terms of what's being said and what's being charted, and charted to the style that the doctor wants it. But you're right, there's that competitive nature, so to speak, of, well, I can just click really quickly a few times and get the template that I want for doing the procedure. So that is some stiff competition, but these are making a real impact for people, especially who are not as proficient, with clicking through some of the templates, or having created the templates in the first part. And they're cost effective, so it's a really good way for the company to get a single product that makes an impact at a cost effective standpoint into the practice, and then roll out. Denti AI has followed this, roll out other solutions, that might be more perio charting or odontogenic charting, or might be other forms of diagnostic assistance on x-rays, or other services that they may provide to other business or clinical workflows. To the question of price point, it's meaningful. Practices cannot pay $200, $300, $400, $500 a month per practice for many different solutions, right? That is just way too high from an expense or overhead standpoint for the model and the margins that these practices need to have. It's simply unreasonable. So I think the rise of compatibility and consolidation, right? Practice is ultimately landing on solutions that provide multiple functions all at once and integrate into their existing tech stack or practice management system. I think these are going to see favoritism in the market. They might bank on one solution for $400, $500, $600 a month, but paying multiple discrete solutions for the same, having to put in all the effort to integrate them and make them talk to each other. It's really hard to individualize the bang for the buck, right, on each tech, and then compare it to one that does all of these functions in one. It's always it's a measure of just how much better can we get. It's a measure of change management of the people, and that's a little harder to manage. And it's a manage of how good any of the individual solutions are. It may be a one-size-fits-all that provides an 80% solution on any of those discrete areas, versus individual solutions that you have to take the time to individually string together, that you have to individually pay for, but get you closer to 90%, right? So there is the question, does that additional 10% of service or coverage, that's going to come from the individualized nature, does that overcome, right? Does that benefit overcome all the time and effort to string it together and the cost that you're going to have to pay monthly, right? What I think a lot of companies don't necessarily see, that where the practices or DSOs have to decide, is it takes more than just winning dollar for dollar, right? It can't be that, this solution brought you a benefit of $37,000, and the solution you're suggesting is $38,000 or $39,000 or $40,000, right, benefit, and so you've beaten them by 1 or 2 or 3K.
Yeah,
Right?
I agree. No one switches for that little amount.
The switching cost is
Yeah.
really a large, right? I would tell people it's depending on the practice and just how nimble they are, how the complexity of the organization. I mean, it is minimally 30 to 50% of additional cost, right? So you can't just save them. You can't just save them $1,000 or $2,000 on a $35,000 solution. You got to be $50,000, right?
Yeah,
Or better for them
I agree.
to
Yeah,
take on the
I think,
solution.
yeah, how we think of this is we want to be, you know, a platform that's 10x better and 10x cheaper. That that's a switch. That's a no-brainer. You have to make it a no-brainer. And to that point, an AI native, for those that don't know exactly what that means, it's this platform was created, it had to be created in the past couple years because the ability to create this native everything built from the scratch with a brain that knows everything about everything and is all in one system, that wasn't available even 4 years ago. Um, so when you have that, number one, you're able to build software faster. You're able to make, because you're faster, you could do also less developers. You can make it cheaper. So now you're faster, you're cheaper, and there's no more point solutions because it's all in one subscription, less costs per month because you're not paying, so less logins. So from every angle, from what I'm seeing, is an AI native platform. How could anything compete with that in the long run?
Yeah, yeah, and I think I agree with you, right? I think some other blind spots, for the purposes of edification here, that others should consider. One question is, can the big players catch up? Right? What is a Henry Schein One, doing in this conversation? Can their partnership with AWS, can the vibe coding that they demonstrated at Thrive Live, their event, can those enable DSOs who are already using them, or practices that are already using them, to create solutions from within? Right? There's certainly a question there. Um, I think there's also something to understand that I think, you know, no matter how you're using AI in your practice or in your life, right, is that a lot of these companies built on top of, some of the existing LLMs and platforms. What goes on in the back end between the B2B software company and the back end, AI provider is essentially a credit system there, right? And I think there's a huge amount of underestimation in terms of those major AI, the Anthropics, the Open AIs of the world, monetizing their business model, right? Is monetizing off of volume and usage there, right? And so some of these business models that may look attractive on the business side, right, between the software company and the practice, they may or may not be so sustainable on the back end, depending on the shifts in terms of the business models with the AI companies, right? We help, Revere help startups with this by offering credit systems. There are venture capital programs that only VC funds.
Are you talking about like tokens and compute? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Tokens and going into more of the technical language. Yeah, the tokens and the compute, depending on exactly how some of these solutions are built, right? You have to understand the B2B software companies you may be using, and a way to diligence these companies, whether you're looking to invest in them or use them in your practice, might be exactly what is the tokenization or business model on the other side that you're paying, right? Because no sense in going with a solution that's either not going to be there tomorrow because they can't sustain the back end cost, right, or is going to have to crank the cost up on you because of the way that they're built, and especially if they're relying on just one player instead of pinging multiple of the different AI solutions, they're really exposed, and so are you as a user or investor.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Henry Schein One. Personally, I think they got complacent. Uh, they have, I think over 50% of the market share of the practice management software. They're built on technology from the 1990s. They have it's difficult on their ascend cloud to migrate data. I mean, they charge anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 for people to leave, which is crazy. It's like having an Android and then wanting to switch to an Apple, and then Apple saying, "Pay us $3,000 to leave." you know. So I think that they lose trust when they do that and have that like in their fine print, and dentists are kind of like, I didn't know that, because no one reads the fine print. So now they feel stuck. So I think there's that with Henry Schein. I think they will integrate as they're doing with other point solutions that have AI, um, but they don't. The data doesn't flow well. It's not seamless. Um, what are they? And they're still going to be charging a lot. Their software is like $1,000 a month, and then now you want to add on another $200-300 for each point solution. Again, now you're at the $2,000 tech stack again. So there's a price problem there. Um, they they have to figure out, kind of what to do. So they're just going to use marketing tactics. People are calling it, now if you look, you'll see people use, we're natively integrating, which means we're just integrating. Now they want to use the word native, but native really means that everything is built. It's like a house, the way I describe it. This house, when you're building this software that everything is in one, you have to knock down this house to the ground and build it from scratch with new pipes. The electricity's got to connect to this. Everything's got to be all in one. You can't remodel this house. So in order for like a Dentrix or even an Open Dental or EagleSoft, for them to be able to come at the same speed as an AI native, they have to tear down what they have. And I could publicly say this and with confidence, because that's a fact. Um, and it's just a matter of time before I think dentists realize this and figure this out.
Yeah, I certainly agree that there's a question there, right? I don't. It does not appear that any of the large, legacy companies intend to, tear down their foundation, right? They're seem to be pursuing the strategy of build and add on top. And then there's also the other side of that coin, which is, well, just how much can you build and add on top of a foundation that was built in a certain way during a certain time period to begin with? Um, I think that's a tough one. I think dentists are caught. I think they're caught in price. I think they're caught in change management. Um, I think marginal improvements matter in that case more than sometimes even more than large improvements, because large improvements mean a lot of change, and change means a lot of cost. So it's I certainly think that there's a question there, but one thing is clear: it's a rising tide floats all boats here,
Absolutely.
right? The advent of AI, the
100%.
new types of solutions and the way they're being designed as AI native, or designed from the perspective of the patient, or even designed as a customer relationship management solution rather than a practice management solution. I think these things are forcing all the players,
Yeah.
large and legacy, all the way down to neophyte and new, uh, to be different, to try to do more. And I think the net benefit really is in the
Yeah.
is to the patient at the end of the
Yeah.
day,
I,
especially to
I
the
would.
extent that under the Cures Act, for example, they can access their data, right? As it is their data and their right
Mhm.
to the data. And when we want things like better case acceptance rates, um, the patients need their data. When we talk about things like trust with the dentist, and when the patient asks for their x-ray and they get something lesser, or something poor quality, or something weeks or months later, right? Those things don't build trust. So I think it is some of the education and technology that's come out of people like Brian Laskin and Tooth Apps, that has come out of
Mhm.
companies like Hey Donto raising a bunch of money.
Mhm.
That's come out of companies like Oracu, who are more AI focused on the treatment plan, but also provide the patient quite a bit of access and trust, like you're building. Things like this really are, I think, elevating the patient, which is just so critical in the process.
Absolutely. And to that point, I think I read the other day that the whole AI industry in dental is growing at a 37% year over year right now. So there's definitely this wave, and all the boats are rising, and there's a lot of room for many
Yeah,
companies.
I'll reiterate right there. I don't think it's AI that replaces the dentist, right? But it is the dentist who
Yeah,
uses AI that replaces the dentist who does not use AI, right? And I think that that concept really needs to sink in on our entire industry. Clearly, it's growing, right? And clearly that is starting to take off. But that is something that the profession does need to accept in this day and age. And it's not just coming, it's here.
yeah. Uh, Another question I got for you. So, will AI make private practices, in your opinion, more competitive against DSOs, or will it strengthen DSOs more?
Yeah, I think it works to benefit, frankly, any practice on the practice level, right? If you're just isolating individual practices of a DSO and practices, um, that are operating independently, they're all just so different one to one, even just within the DSO category. No, if you know one DSO, you know one DSO. They're all structured very differently. So it's really hard to almost pair the two groups against each other. I think here are some of the areas it is improving, right? On the DSO side, the way to look at that, right, is that a DSO, dental support organization, is providing non-clinical business support to its practices, right? So to the extent that, bringing in some of these solutions, integrating some of these solutions, and implementing some of these solutions, choosing among these solutions, to the extent that those are sort of covered services by a DSO, this non-clinical business support element, I mean, those dental practices are going to get a lot of help, right, in doing these things and finding them and diligencing them and implementing them. Um, they, depending on their DSO model, they may or may not have less or more individual choice in their practice. In most cases, of any of DSOs that I know, and I know a heck of a lot of DSOs, um, from a clinical perspective, the doctors are, pretty autonomously in control. From back end business solutions, the DSO, the business team have, a little bit more influence there. Um, on the individual practice level, the both the burden and the risk and the benefit all fall on the same sort of lean team there, right? So to the extent that they have an innovative culture internally, to the extent that they've got the bandwidth to source or diligence these solutions, to the extent that they can really test and implement them, and if they're not working, identify it and change it. When there's multiple solutions coming in, integrate them. To the extent they can do those things on their own, I think it really will help them. So that's kind of the way that I would look at it. It's the dentists and DSOs get a lot of support from the business side, and the dentists on their own, they don't, but they capture more of the kind of individual upside of their decisions, but also accept the risks, right, or downsides
Yeah,
of them. So I think that's definitely something to consider. AI is making just general accessibility to. So one of the big, I think one of the big barriers here is that it's a heck of a lot easier for these some of the newest and most successful AI solutions to go sell to DSOs. They're more identifiable. They come to the same events. They market themselves and they're known, right? They're known entities. So a lot of new, strong solutions come to DSOs. It's also a lot of sales, obviously, in one transaction, though the sales cycle is longer. It is a lot harder for these solutions to find these small, but great AI solutions to find the individual practice and sell it. And it's much more expensive for them to do that. And I think AI in general, I've seen now some tools to help aggregate and access individual practices, right? And even some buying groups, some GPOs strengthen
hmm,
with some of the technology that's come out. So it's interesting to see that, because that's been a big
yeah,
shift. Yeah, that's been a bit.
and
Evaluate them too
valuable,
as
and they're
kind of a
valuable.
truth source. Some private
Mhm.
networks of dentists, or
Yeah,
mastermind groups of dentists, or study clubs of dentists, or otherwise aggregation of individual private practices. Some of that has come together, and they're more searchable and findable using AI solutions, and they're getting access to more AI solutions by coming together like that. So that's a big change that I think we've also seen here.
Yeah, definitely. So this next part, I'm just gonna do some rapid fire kind of questions. It'll just be
Okay,
just one word or short, really short answers, and we'll just kind of go through a few of them, and then we'll close.
sounds
All
great.
right. So, uh, what do you think is the most underrated company in dentistry?
Ooh, um, that's really tough. Um, I think I would have to go with what I'm going to call non-sexy dentistry, right? To keep it as brief as possible. This is
Hmm.
the uptime health. This is
Yeah.
the maybe perceptive on the scanning side, right? It's equipment intelligence. It's new intraoral scanning, mechanisms. It's stuff that doesn't sit as software front and center, easy to access. I think it's back end, tech that everybody needs and impacts everybody, but is a little less sexy on the surface.
Got it. What's the most overrated trend?
Has to be AI. There's a huge. It is powerful.
Any particular part
What's
of
that?
AI? Any particular category of AI?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because AI sort of came into dentistry evaluating X-rays, right? And that almost seems like old business to everybody today, right? We've gone on to so many other clinical and so many other business workflows beyond just finding things in X-rays, so to speak. I don't mean to make that sound simple. It's not. So just due to the passage of time and
Hmm.
sort of recency effect and bias, it probably is that. Um, But again, I'll reemphasize for everybody, it's a human-centric business. AI in general, it's not going to solve your biggest problems. Those are human problems. They require human solutions and humans in the loop to identify and set up the right solutions. So just the sense of thinking AI is going to solve it
Yeah,
all, it won't.
always. I think always. Yeah. Uh, what's more powerful in the technology that's going to change things, the clinical AI or the operational
I
AI?
have to say clinical AI at the end of it, not about it's not just about public health impact, here, but really all that we do is based off of the clinical work that, goes from the hands of the doctor to the body of the patient, right? At the end of the day, that is what drives everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, your business processes can be efficient, um, but the really big swings that you'll see in your practice are from the clinical work that you do and the people that do them.
Most important skill for future dentists.
Um, Figure out how to learn quickly. You have to learn what real dentistry is like and how to do it as quickly as
Good
humanly
answer.
possible. And then you've got to
Yeah.
figure out the procedures you really love to do that are going to allow you to, mentally stay in the game and not face burnout.
Which non-dental company are you looking at? Like that
Completely
you're
not
impressed
related
with?
to dentistry at all.
Non, like yeah,
That's interesting. Uh,
yeah, but it could be like AI or technology.
Yeah, so I personally really like alternative energy. I also look at a lot of stuff in the veterinary and opto tech worlds. So I've started to get really fascinated over
Wow.
ultrasound and OCT type imaging,
Mhm.
not how they're used in dentistry, but how they're used in those spaces, and then thinking through maybe how they apply to
Mhm.
to this field.
One company every dentist should be watching.
One company every dentist should be watching. Um, Well, I love what you guys are building, trust, and I'd also probably have to say perceptive. I think this ability for OCT and intraoral scanning is critical. I think the other thing to put in this category is anything that gives the patient access to their data, hands down.
Yes. Yeah. And they're working on it. There's a committee right now, I'm sure you're familiar with. There was just a call this week where we have all the players, as you mentioned, Tooth Apps, Heydonto,
Yes.
ADA, CMS. Everyone is trying to get interoperability and patient access to their charts, and I think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So, just one last question for you. What is something you believe about the future of dentistry that most people disagree with?
So kind of a contrarian point of
Exactly.
view. Yeah, I don't think that there are enough hands or ever will be. I don't care how many additional dental schools we put out or, different roles within dentistry that we create. There are not enough hands to treat the population size, right? We have 200,000 dentists. We have 350 plus million aging
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
Americans. You look at other countries around the world that are much greater disparities, right? Much larger populations, like in Far East Asia, and they have. It's clear robotics is a key solution here. Again, it's not about replacing any provider, right? It's about Da Vinci did not replace any medical
Yeah,
surgeons,
you're always going to need
right?
someone operating it.
You need them operating. It's a people driven, services driven business. There is no replacing the people in the business or the clinical side, right? The people always are there, but there have to literally be more hands. There have to be more hands to treat the amount of healthcare need that there is.
Yeah. Well said. I agree. Well said. Uh, Thank you for all your information, your knowledge, and sharing it with everyone. I know you are really deep into the technology and investing world, and you talk to so many different people. So the information that you're giving is really gold. So thank you for that, and hopefully we can continue maybe in several months from now, a year from now, do another one and kind of see if you said what if what you said actually came to fruition and your predictions for the next year. So thank you so much, and
Hope that there will be some surprises. Thank you, Shervin. Appreciate it. And anybody who's trying to find me, Jeremy at ReverePartnersVC.com or visit our website ReverePartnersVC.com. Thanks, Shervin.
awesome. All right, take care. Bye, everyone.